Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman issue 11 by Joshua Williamson and David Baldeón. The Lex Luthor Revenge Squad make their grand debut this issue as Joshua Williamson shows us the other side of their arrival at Supercorp, filling in some gaps from the last issue and focusing on Lena's point of view for most of the issue before Superman returns from the Wild West. Throughout his 11 issues so far, Williamson has done a pretty great job of treating us with some wonderful continuity connections with his stories, but none more so than this issue as Lena's backstory is brought up, and it's pretty much how it's always been since she was invented, giving us mentions of the huge Imperiex war, Lex selling her off to Brainiac 13 for some technology before Superman rescues her from the villain. It's very fun continuity connections like this that really prove the book is being written by a guy who grew up reading that era of Superman, the early 2000s Joe Kelly, Jeff Loeb era. Anyway, the Revenge Squad make their presence known, and its newest member, a being in a Lex war suit, is quickly revealed to be Letitia Luthor, if it wasn't obvious already. Of course, she's doing this to get revenge on her son taking her company away from her and exiling her to an island. I quite like that the villain group all have pretty good reasons for wanting to get back at Lex, more so than the usual Superman Revenge Squad, and I can't help but agree with some of their points, although that begins to go away at the end of this issue once they start just doing the usual villain stuff of targeting Metropolis and the people within it. If the previous canon connections weren't enough, Williamson has even more in store as we learn about the Kryptonite Graft is using, finding that it's all synthetic Kryptonite and it was made by testing it on Bizarro, which explains his role in this since we saw him in the first couple of issues and saw that he was captured by Graft and Farm, and we never really understood why, and now we know he was being used as a sort of testbed for this Kryptonite. Because this is synthetic Kryptonite as well, Graft has been able to decide what it really does to Superman, making the red Kryptonite, which usually has a different effect on the hero each time it's used, cause him to become enraged, which is one of the many side effects the red Kryptonite can have on Superman. And I'm intrigued to see if we're actually going to see more, since they made a point at saying that Graft made the Kryptonite emit the type of radiation that turns Superman evil. So it'd be really cool if we got to see some of the more classic effects that it's had on him, like where it turns his head into a giant ant bug alien thing, or even more wacky ones where he becomes like a dwarf or has rapid aging, or his hair just continues to grow without stopping. It would be cool to see some of that sort of stuff and bring some levity to the book as well. Superman's anger, however, ends up being Graft's downfall, as the hero is also enraged at what he has done to him, attacking Graft and defeating the Revenge Squad quite quickly before turning back on Lex. Graft has one more play though, as it's revealed that he's flooding Metropolis with Kryptonite gas, but not just any Kryptonite gas. It's a specifically made Kryptonite gas that affects humans the same amount of time that it affects Superman, effectively giving people instant radiation poisoning. We learned this isn't something that Graft designed either, but was an old plan that Lex came up with in his early hero days when he teamed with Graft and Farm, and Graft is using it to destroy Lex's legacy in Metropolis once and for all, being that that is the only thing he actually cares about. This plot development seemed a little more complicated than it needed to be, and it probably could have been simplified a little bit more than Lex made this stuff when he was a kid and now it's being used by a villain who also knew about it, again to help rid the city of Lex, but then also attack the people of Metropolis, even though it's never really been made clear if they want to hurt the people of Metropolis or not. It's a little bit more complicated than it needed to be, and I'm sure Williamson will explain it a little bit more in the next issue as we dive back into Lex's past. But as a final reveal, it just kind of left me scratching my head as to why is it just this of a complex plan, especially when Graft and Farm's initial plans were we need to get back at Lex for what he did to us in the past. David Baldeón tags in as the book's artist, and again, just really fantastic artist and fantastic series of artists we've had on this issue. There's never been one bad artist on this book for the past 11 issues and annual. David's art has a real cartoony charm to it that I think fits really well with Superman, especially a Superman issue that's got quite a bit of action in it, which this one did, especially in the back half with Superman taking down the Revenge Squad quite easily in really grand fashion as well. I quite like that we see the unhinged Superman just batter his way through the chain. A villain not 2 issues ago he had trouble with when he was trying to negate damage and everything. So it just goes to show you that with Superman lets loose, he can and will defeat a villain quite easily. All in all, Superman issue 11 was a great issue. It had some really awesome callbacks to the past continuity of DC Comics and Superman comics as well, with Imperiex War and Lena Luthor making a return and her history being sort of sealed in that it's all in continuity, as is sort of the mandate going forward with DC since Dawn of DC. I like the return of all of the different variations of Kryptonite and what they can do to Superman. It's always fun when they show up, and always fun when writers decide to change up what the effects do, or in this case even bring back effects that we haven't seen for quite a while on the page. The book isn't without its drawbacks though. There's like a bit of an overly complicated end plot there, with Kraft using Lex's past creations to attack Metropolis and make it look like Lex is doing it. It's a bit too complicated than it needed to be, as well as the Letitia Luthor reveal, which really wasn't a big reveal, but it was a very obvious one, and I don't know why they tried to hide it from us. Even if it was just for an issue, it just seems like we didn't need that. We could definitely tell it was going to be her in the suit. So I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of her, hopefully in the coming issues. Hopefully she sticks around a little bit more, since we haven't really seen much of her and what her deal is. But overall, this comic was a great time. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.